Welcome to Connect to Develop, where we bridge healthcare, strategy, and leadership insights.
Hey, listeners, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Marney, and my amazing co-host Erika and I are digging into our thoughts on the internet, surgeon review sites, and social media, and the role that they play in today's building a practice for surgeons. Erika, we've both been in this industry long enough to see the genesis of websites, rating systems, all of these things. What do you feel are the pros and cons of, we'll start with the surgeon rating websites, and can they sometimes go too far?
I think that it just depends. I would start by saying that the pro to having those websites is that people want to know who's good, right? Like patients want to be informed. It gives patients some agency, which is incredibly important. It gives them some ability to kind of get to know the surgeon, even though it's through a profile that's put there, but it's better than walking in and just getting someone that you don't really know. This allows them to have some agency in that. I would say that the potential con is context. You can be an incredible surgeon and still get bad reviews simply because, let's say, a patient waited too long, or the patient didn't like the way the waiting room was set up. I mean, there's just so many things that can kind of create some nuances there for an honest review. And it can be based on emotion. So yeah, I think that it can go too far. I think the pro is, one, it's good for information. It gives the patient agency, but sometimes the con is that it might not be the true context painted in that picture.
There should be categories, kind of like how OpenTable, sends you a request to review after you've booked through them, ambiance, food, service, price, etc. Different categories for this. Well, then how about your thoughts on surgeons having their own website, whether they're in a private practice or they're in a health system? What are your thoughts on, these personal websites for surgeons?
I'm all for it. As a patient, I would like to be able to go to a patient website and see their face, get to know, I guess, their philosophy. It takes away from just looking at a hospital directory and getting a general bio, I would say. I think I look at it almost like a virtual handshake in a sense. You're kind of getting to know a little bit about their personal as much as they want to share. And it gives you a little bit of a digital first impression from the website, is my opinion. I think that if you are scrolling through the hospital directory, they all look the same. There is kind of just a generic bio and it doesn't feel as personable. And that might come down to personal opinion as from a patient standpoint, but I appreciate that. I'm all for it. I don't know what your thoughts are on.
I really like it when they have videos. To your point, their philosophy, they talk about, a little bit about them to, marketing, they call it humanize the brand, right? I'm not just a surgeon, I'm a human too. My family and I love to go hiking on the weekends with, our golden retriever, whatever. I kind of like to know that the person working on me is also, a human being. Although we know it, it's nice to be able to have that tangible from their voice, them looking at the camera kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. If I think about this, even just 10 years ago, this wasn't a thing. The social media presence, just the emphasis on making sure that there was some of that humanizing the branding, to your point, Marnie, it wasn't a thing. And so it is today. I almost feel that branding piece and how you market yourself as a clinician is so critical to the relationships that you build with your patients. And I think that applies across all specialties. I hear all the time of doctors who have been the same doctor that a whole family goes to, right? But that's because they've fostered a relationship, they've gotten to know people. But then when you have word of mouth and you want to refer someone, what's the place that you refer them to? Check out their website. And so going to that first point of connection to build a rapport, it's digital, but it's the first impression, digital impression. So I agree with you 100%.
So let's chunk out social media, because I personally feel like each social media outlet has its own purpose. So let's start with LinkedIn, right? Because that was the one as us professionals know first. What are your thoughts on what good looks like for a robust presence on LinkedIn for a surgeon?
Yeah, I think that for a surgeon, LinkedIn really serves as a platform where surgeons can showcase leadership, share research, build reputation beyond the OR. And so I really see LinkedIn as that platform. Additionally, if you think about all of LinkedIn learning and all the avenues and ability to share videos, there's also opportunity for surgeons to speak or teach or even do consulting using LinkedIn as a platform and kind of leveraging that platform for those opportunities. I've seen surgeons that are really, really great at leveraging the LinkedIn platform. I see ones that are probably just starting to dip their toes in. I think it's an area that is probably underrated and underutilized to some, and then some who have just figured it out. But I do think it's a great place for showcasing that leadership, research, reputation, even some of those cases you see. And also, Marnie, you mentioned humanizing the brand. I'm going back to that, where they're using LinkedIn to show their approach with patient care. Like that's another way I've seen LinkedIn. So those are my thoughts.
When I look at a surgeon who's actively sharing articles, they're highlighting their peers, they're discussing things that a society or a nonprofit that they're involved in, I think, that's the way to do it, because you've got your peers, you've got potential patients, and you've also got the industry that funds and that partners with a lot of the research and, the next things happening. So I absolutely am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I recommend that every surgeon, even if you are a younger surgeon where your patients might be coming more from Instagram, TikTok, et cetera, I still think that a robust LinkedIn presence is very good, whether you want to be a community doctor or you have aspirations, to be amongst, the top level academics in society. So let's jump from LinkedIn over to Facebook. What are your thoughts on, Facebook? And it probably depends, quite frankly, on your patient subset and maybe even your locale. But what's good look like for Facebook for you?
Yeah, I think Facebook, I see it very different just because it tends to be more of, it's a little noisy. There's a lot going on Facebook. It's more, it crosses over into kind of that family and personal atmosphere. And so if a surgeon wants to highlight their practice and use Facebook to leverage that platform to kind of showcase what they're doing as a practice, kind of the culture within their practice, highlighting some wins, I think there's a space for that, even for testimonials and community engagement events that there might be affiliated with that practice or area. But I wouldn't use it in the same way that it's leveraged for LinkedIn. I see those two as very, very different hubs. LinkedIn is a professional, I would say, networking hub. I don't see Facebook in the same way. I think you have to be very strategic when leveraging, simply because historically it's had a little bit more of kind of that family reunion on social media is kind of how I see it. And so if you're kind of thinking how to highlight a practice, I think it would be more around events and community engagements and testimonials of sorts.
What I think the role that Facebook plays, and I would tend to say this is most likely more towards your private practice, or I could see health systems, whether they're large academic systems or even, non-academic health systems, using it as, their page or whatnot. What I like about Facebook is it feels like it's very much a storytelling. People are willing to read a decent length, as long as it's not a complete rant, right? Facebook post, and you sprinkle some pictures of an event that you did or a video about patient education where you're talking about why is a patient feeling pain in this body part and what that could mean and what your treatment options are. So I feel like Facebook, in my mind, for specifically, spine and total joint, because of the patient population coming to that, I think Facebook is a great place for a private practice surgeon to really humanize that brand, to really help create a sense of, alleviating that anxiety that a patient might feel. And then also, just some interesting content. There's a lot of patients out there that either, themselves or maybe even they're the caretaker for a patient, just kind of want to learn a little bit more once they've experienced, some relevant healthcare. And I think it's a great modality for that.
It's a really good take. Maybe I haven't seen on the Facebook side, I haven't seen kind of a strong profile. So I'd be interested to kind of look at it through that lens from a Facebook, like I said, Facebook perspective, just simply because most of, surgeons or anyone I've connected with has been outside of that Facebook platform.
Instagram, TikTok, I lump them both into two, mostly because I'm so old that I really can't figure out the whole TikTok thing. So I've stayed on Instagram because what I found is that they literally mirror the same content. What do you think about this? Because it's a level up, from Facebook. It's not a tutorial. It's not a patient, testimonial. It's the surgeon, showcasing their personality.
Yeah, I'm with you, Marnie. I just haven't been able to really get the TikTok component. I don't even have TikTok, but And it could be the same. I just haven't quite been able to fully figure it out. It's like I'm just barely getting into Instagram not too long ago myself. So, but for Instagram, I can speak. What I see is that it's a place for very short, visual, kind of attention grabbers, things to kind of get people to lean in. It's not necessarily the space to unpack, but it serves as a place to kind of to showcase some of, let's say if it's research, right? Like something quick regarding research or an article, and serves as a redirect for people to be able to dig further. I do love Instagram in the sense that I think it serves as a place for people to tease in their personality along with their profession in a much more hybrid way. And I like that because you're getting to know two sides, whereas comparing them to the ones we've talked about earlier, like LinkedIn and Facebook, for me, in my experience, has been one or the other. I think Instagram provides a hybrid space. And so that's why I really like Instagram. It's very quick. It's obviously short. I feel like in this fast pace, it's that short attention span. It's a place where you're just going to get a snippet, but enough that gets you to either lean in or look into things more. Don't know what your thoughts on it, but I'm still fairly new. My kids make fun of me that I'm a little late to the game.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. So, any favorites, whether it's for Instagram or this person's doing great on LinkedIn, who can we look at and say, okay, that's what good looks like according to Erika?
Yeah, I'll give two examples. One of them being someone that was actually on the podcast recently, Dr. Michael Redler. He's an expert in sports medicine, upper extremity. And what I've seen is he has a very strong presence on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And what I've seen, I'll start with kind of the latter. LinkedIn, he leverages it for, networking, highlighting some of his medical mission work, engages in content and in conferences, even with industry. Like you just see a lot of engagement. He's just kind of popping up all the time. And so I think that's one of the advantages. And when we think of somebody who's doing that well, it's somebody who's present, right? Like they have a cadence. They're showcasing their skills with patients, their clinical skills, their surgeon leadership skills, kind of a really well-rounded picture. So he kind of comes to mind for Facebook in the same way. We're connected on Facebook and I can kind of see a lot of that sprinkling into Facebook. And so there's a presence there. Instagram is still fairly new. I'm still figuring that one out to kind of see, but I would say the one that I've seen the most is LinkedIn, but he's also leveraging the two other platforms to showcase not only his clinical capabilities, but his personal, passions for patient care. The second person I would highlight is Dr. Ira Kirschenbaum, who's editor-in-chief of JOE, the Journal of Orthopedic Experience and Innovation. And he's also the orthopedic department chair for the Bronx Hospital. And so what I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn because I partner with him on several different things, is that especially on the side of Joey, everything that we do with articles is about eyeballs, right? And so driving content, driving articles, driving research, engaging surgeons in that community to kind of discuss. And so I see him as one of the best practices for me on LinkedIn because he's so engaged, has a robust cadence of how he's putting information out and how he's engaging with his peers and other thought leaders around research and clinical data. And it works because he's got a strong following. So I would say for LinkedIn, he's a great example. I think with Instagram, I know that's an area that he's dabbing into and growing there. And I think it's going to be just as strong as LinkedIn, just simply because it's getting very, very creative. But LinkedIn, highly, highly, highly strong presence there. What about you? I know, what would you say? Because I kind of highlighted LinkedIn as kind of the strong one with Insta being kind of second and some Facebook, but who would you highlight that's doing really, really well in these spaces?
YouTube specifically, and going back to concierge medicine, I actually had the opportunity to meet Dr. Brian Su, SU. He's a spine surgeon in Northern California, and he has a phenomenal YouTube page. It's under the handle Dr. Brian with an I. Sue, the spine guy. So altogether, Dr. Brian Sue, the spine guy. And he has some incredible patient education videos. And the story behind that was he said he kept coming home to his wife when he started off in practice saying, have the same conversation about the same, we'll call it 10 pathology and procedures, and it takes up a lot of time. And by the end of the day, sometimes, I've said the same thing over and over again. And he said, there's got to be a better way. And she said, well, why don't you make some videos, and he doesn't use them to supplement. He still has that conversation and sits down and really talks through things with the patient, but it can be something that he can send at the back end or as a follow-up, or even, have them as he's talking to him, pull it up and say, hey, take this down. If you have any questions, kind of review it afterwards, call me if you need anything, that kind of stuff. And so not only does it solve for efficiency, they're incredibly cool looking videos, from an aesthetics and entertainment. They're just the perfect length to really dig in enough, but without making you feel like you just got crash coursed into residency. So I think he does a phenomenal job, and he's been able to build a concierge medical practice. There's people that actually fly in from around the country because they really enjoyed his videos and his philosophy and the way he explains things. Then I'll jump over to TikTok, Instagram. I actually know this person. I met him when he was a PGY2, I think. Dr. Chester Donnelly III. He's a spine surgeon in Dallas, Texas. He's got some very entertaining TikToks on Instagram. His handle is Donnelly Spine Consult, Donnally Spine Consult. And he's got a mixture of humanizing that brand. You really get a feel for his personality and the type of, surgeon, from a human standpoint that you'll be working with. But he also does some great education too. So you'll see the theme with me. I like to see a lot of education, a lot of humanizing the brand. Another person is Dr. Jenna Bernstein, who's a hip and knee surgeon in Fairfield, Connecticut. And it looks like her colleague, who's another hip and knee surgeon, Ashley Blair, but on their Instagram, it's called Ortho Girls, Gurlz. And great videos where you really get a sense of who they are, their philosophy, you get a sense for the things that they're involved in, what they care about. But once again, great education tools. If I was a patient and I was trying to figure something out, or if I was caring for a future patient, these are some great people that I would go to.
YouTube is such a great platform. And so if there are people that are doing that well and leveraging it well, because I, of course, go to YouTube for a lot of content, but it's more on the, if I'm listening to like a podcast that's on YouTube, or pointing people like, oh, we're on YouTube, right? Like, so there's a lot of podcasts there, but for education from the surgeon perspective, I can see that being such a tool. I mentioned Dr. Kirschenbaum, who actually also has a lot of materials on YouTube. There's a whole YouTube page, but kind of leveraging that as a platform for surgeons, thought leaders, industry to go back and review material that has gone out via, his platforms that he has, topic sessions. So, I didn't mention that, but there's also that. So I love YouTube. I think there's a lot of opportunity on YouTube. Which ones haven't we covered? I would say, I know, Twitter is out there, Marnie. We didn't really talk about Twitter. Twitter is one that I'm still kind of familiarizing myself.
Yeah, Twitter is a challenge. I think it's called X or something like that now. I still write in Twitter, and my computer somehow knows what I really mean. Dr. Michael Bolognese, does a great job in his Twitter presence. You really understand, the things that he's passionate about, and he highlights his residents and fellows and, American Association of Hip and Knee Surgeons. For me, Twitter's a little bit hard because there's so much content. And because of advertising, you're flooded with things that are completely not for you. And so I will literally get onto Twitter to do some posts and then to engage, and I try to follow, institutions or surgeons or nonprofits that I really enjoy. And I try to interact, but there's just so much stuff that I literally have about a 35-second tolerance on Twitter, X, whatever, and then I have to get off. It's just too much. So I don't really know how much good from a brand building, humanizing education standpoint that you can have, because I think there was some article that came out within 38 seconds, everything that was on your immediate Twitter feed now disappears and, refreshes and rolls up.
Wow. That's actually really interesting. And as you're kind of talking through that, there's so many platforms, Marty. I can only imagine how much time it takes to just have let's say, somewhat of a strategy on how to post effectively across all of these platforms. And so I'm sure that, surgeons are being very deliberate about where they're spending their time, because you could spend all day just going from post to post to
Oh,
post.
yeah. And I mean, you're supposed to be doing surgery and seeing patients in clinic. So what surgeon even has the time for that? Here's the interesting thing, and this could be, a segue for a business. While there's some amazing marketing articles about the best times to post to all of these outlets, the best content, I personally love Buffer because you have this AI assistant. Sometimes they completely get the mark wrong. Sometimes they get it right and do a better job. So I was, kind of doctor a little bit, pun intended. But I mean, there's nothing just for physicians and geared towards their patients. So that would be an interesting, social media channel to emerge where it's just for doctors to post for patients. That would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It would be very, very interesting. I'm hoping that there isn't some new platform that's going to come up in the near future. I think we have so many already. I could just having another one come to the table would just be another area, another learning curve. I think we have plenty. And that's not even including AI and all of the other techie things that are out there. So who knows what's in the future with how accelerated our technology is moving, but we've got plenty of platforms to leverage and, network, get messaging out. And I know, we talked about them right now. There's just so many surgeons that are really killing it in this space.
I think it's incredible to see. I definitely was one that, I do feel that social media has a place, and I think it needs to be more education based than self-promotion if you're a physician. That's just my bias. But I love seeing all the people that are blazing the trail and getting it right. And so I think these are some great jump off points if there's surgeons out there that are looking for it. I will say, getting back to one thing, if I were a surgeon and I was trying to do one extra thing, probably spend money on it, right, to enhance my practice, it would be to create patient education videos about my philosophy and next steps based on whether they're, going to PT, whether they're going to injection, whether they need further diagnostics, or whether they're going straight for surgery, that I would work with a company that knows how to do it, get these up and running, create my own YouTube channel, and use them as follow-ups for patients, depending on what that next step is, because there's no way that a patient sitting there being told that they're most likely going to need surgery is remembering everything, right? There's a bunch of questions. So from an efficiency standpoint of, continuing to spread what I just shared with my patient to not only my patient, but a future caretaker that might have them before and or after surgery, as well as just to get my name out there and to build, something that maybe other patients could reach me at, to build concierge, it would be investing in a YouTube channel and creating some really solid education pieces. Erika, if there's one thing from a social media standpoint, what is?
I really like what you just said. I think that's a method to set the practice apart and also really help boost some of those surgeon satisfaction scores, right? If you're meeting patients where they are and you're filling in the gap with education and making sure that they have all the information they need, one, to be informed and to feel comfortable about, whether it's a surgery or whatever procedure they may be having. So I really actually like that suggestion. Even though I'm still learning it myself, I can see Instagram being a really great platform for something similar at a snippet kind of scale, where they're leveraging Instagram to have a presence to, one, connect with their patients, but also educate their patients. So kind of leaning back to what you were saying about humanizing the brand, connecting with people, and then sharing bits and pieces of their clinical practice at kind of like just what through reels, through short videos, through resources. So I would be interested to see that evolve a little bit more. That's what I would say. But I actually love the YouTube recommendation. So if I had to piggyback off of that, I would say doing that at a just not at a larger scale, because I think YouTube would be much more, you can expand that. It's a much more condensed version of that for Insta.
You can find more interviews on our YouTube channel at Marney Reed Presents.